Alright, so we got some more spoilers for 1162. No, this isn't the full summary. We're still probably going to get that tomorrow. So again, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be covering that in detail, like as soon as it comes out. But we are getting a new nice piece of spoilers here that we didn't get yesterday, and it pertains to GARP. So that's why I kind of wanted to make this video, because I don't want to devote tomorrow's video entirely to me talking about GARP and all that stuff, because you know how I've been vocal about GARP. I mean, the community has been in general. He's a very decisive character as of late. So let me quickly go over the spoilers that we got yesterday, and then I'll go into the new spoilers about GARP. The cover story finally ends. Yamato returns to the Flower Capital and reunites with the others. Rox saved and helped Eris and Teach to escape. Eris told Rox to meet in Lelusia. Big Mom took the Azure Dragon Fruit with the intention of giving it to Katakuri, but Kaido ambushed her and snatched the Devil Fruit, then ate it immediately. Rox defeats Garling. Imu possessed Saturn in his spider form, while the remaining Davy clan already had been turned into demons. At the end, Whitebeard and Kaido in his dragon form join Rox confronting Imu. Break next week. Okay, so yeah, that's so much to go over. Check out my video yesterday if you want to hear my thoughts on it. And again, we're going to go over that in full detail tomorrow, hopefully if we get the full summary. But for now, here are the additional spoilers that we are getting from Worst Gen, who is also just as credible as Pewpie, so don't worry about that. These are legit spoilers. Garp and Roger are shocked by Imu's appearance / hockey in God Valley. Garp is genuinely angry / shocked that so many civilians are dead in God Valley, which is why he even calls Sengoku and asks him what happened there. He doesn't know anything about the hunting game. So, a lot to take away from here. So first of all, Garp is aware of Imu's existence, meaning that this whole time he has known, and Roger too. I mean, we knew that Roger knew about Imu because he made it to Laugh Tale and read all the poneglyphs and found out about the Void Century and everything, so obviously he knew about Imu, but this was the first time he had seen Imu / felt their hockey. Another thing is that Garp calls Sengoku during God Valley, so while Sengoku wasn't there, he at least had a phone call while it was happening, or a Den Mushi call, or whatever transponders now. I don't know if it happened directly while it's going on. Roger's looking at Imu, he's like, bro, oh my god, you gotta see this. I wish I could FaceTime you. I don't think that happened. Maybe it's after the fact, but he doesn't know anything about the hunting game. And yes, we for sure assume this was the case. We do like to meme on GARP and, all that stuff. And a lot of it is memes and just playing to the agenda piece. But we all knew for sure that he wasn't aware of the hunting game. It wasn't like he was literally going there yeah, I'm ready to protect the Celestial Dragons and make sure the hunting game doesn't end. That was never the issue. The issue was him finding out about this and still being a part of the military. Now, before I get further into that, let me go back to chapter 957, when we first find out about God Valley. Sengoku gives us a lot of valuable exposition about this, and it's so prevalent now, and it gives us some more insight into what we've been reading these past couple weeks that we're not necessarily getting now, because, that is said in hindsight. So after it's revealed that Big Mom and Kaido are teaming up, and which leads to the whole big thing at Wano with them, it reminds all of the old heads about the Rocks Pirates. We see Sengoku talking to, a bunch of the other Marines and whatnot, and he's explaining to them what the Rocks Pirates are, because that's kind of been essentially erased from most of the history, and all of the current day people that have been born after God Valley aren't really aware of that stuff. So he says the Rocks Pirates were a collection of individuals who came together on the pirate island of Fulalead years ago to make one big score. They were a fierce bunch, constantly killing one another within the group. So that right there is already showing us misinformation for sure. And I think it is misinformation and not Oda just retconning the story, because it does tie together. And it does make sense why this has been spread for the misinformation that it has been, since, it was the Gore saying Imu and all that stuff, since they hated Rocks because he knew the truth. But anyway, going further, Sengoku says, in addition to their captain Rocks, they also featured a young Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido. Yes, it's true, the three of them were part of the same pirate crew years ago. There are other Rocks members who went out to carve out names for themselves, such as the Golden Lion Shiki, the Silver Axe, Captain John, Wang Ji, well, they got along so terribly that not one of them actually wants to tell the tale. Obviously, not really the case. Yeah, they weren't the best of friends, but they were definitely somewhat of a cohesive team. I mean, as we saw in the spoilers, Kaido and Whitebeard stand side by side with Rocks to fight against Emu. That is not a team that gets along terribly. They respected Rocks. Maybe they didn't like him. Maybe they didn't agree with, everything that he had to say, but they respected that dude. I mean, how can you not? They opened hostilities directly against the world government like some kind of terrorist organization. And obviously that's not like completely true. I mean, technically it is, but we all know what actually happened. The government itself covered up much of their deeds, and that's a very interesting line. It's almost double-layered dialogue looking back on it now. But at the time, everyone had heard of the threat they posed. This was due to a fateful event 38 years ago at God Valley. The Rocks pirates, the strongest crew in the world, were wiped out at an island called God Valley. So yeah, that also confirms what we knew for sure. This is going to be the end of the Rocks pirates, unfortunately, and Rocks is very likely going to die here. According to the news reports, a rampaging force of evil that none had been able to stop had been taken down by a Navy Vice Admiral by the name of GARP. His name was heard across the world, and he was soon called a naval hero. There are so many legends about him already, but the man himself never wants to talk about that one. For the sake of the historical record, I'll tell you a bit about it. The first reason for this, which was never reported, is that he had to work with pirates to win the battle. The other reason is that he protected celestial dragons in doing so. And then another marine is like, where did celestial dragons come in? Shouldn't it be a sailor's duty to protect them? And then Son Goku says, his personal moral compass spares no room for such a duty. The reason Garp has always refused to take an admiral's position is because it would place him directly beneath the Celestial Dragon's command. It's only his accomplishments and stature that keep him from being eliminated for his insubordination. In short, this is the truth. In order to protect the Celestial Dragons and their slaves at God Valley, Garp joined forces with Roger there at the island, and they broke apart the Rocks pirates. That is the God Valley incident. So that's really interesting, right? We haven't seen that play out yet. And considering that Emu is there, taking over Saturn's body, and also has Dami Reversi'd the Davy clan, it makes me think now that maybe Emu Dami Reversi's Rocks and makes him like a demon puppet for them, which, man, that would suck. That would be such a anticlimactic ending for Rocks. I would much prefer it if Garling stabs him in the back or something, but making Rocks into a demon, for the Domi Reversi, and then Garp and Roger team up to defeat him, it would just be such a poor ending to all of this, I think. I mean, yeah, it would make Emu more despicable and whatever, but even just thinking about that is like making me disappointed. I hope that's not the case. But anyway, going further, the Marine's like, what? I never heard of God Valley. And then Son Goku's like, that's because you won't find it on any map, featuring an island called God Valley. As a matter of fact, God Valley itself vanished without a trace. The island the world government wanted to hide disappeared entirely. And then after this, he goes on to spread more lies about Rocks, but that whole part is interesting, right? It makes you think that, oh, maybe Uranus nuked this place. After whatever happens with the conclusion of Rocks, Garp, Roger, Garling, and Emu taking over Saturn, and the Dami Reversi Davy clan, something happens where it's like Emu just feels, oh, this place just has to get nuked now. Now, at least part of it gets nuked, because I do think that Thriller Bark itself is like part of God Valley to some extent. So, not really sure about that, but it would make sense that it got nuked by Uranus too. But now that we know that Garp for sure knows everything, the fact that he still chooses to serve as a vice admiral in the Marines, directly in the world government, serving under the Celestial Dragons, whether he likes it or not, does not redeem Garp in my eyes. And even Son Goku says this whole thing about his personal moral compass spares no room for such a duty. I'm not sure if Oda really truly understands what he's doing when he tries to craft this character here. And it might come down to maybe a cultural barrier between me, an American, and Oda being Japanese, especially a Japanese boomer. They see things like this I suppose, very differently than I would. And I'm just going to make one analogy here, and I think it's more than enough. Let's say you are a police officer in Nazi Germany. You technically yourself are not a Nazi, I guess. You're just a police officer in Nazi Germany. You don't have to agree with the Nazi ideals, and you don't have to call yourself a Nazi. However, you are still serving the Nazis and keeping their status quo, pushing their agendas, and maintaining their power. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It is the objective truth. Are you keeping order in your own way and delivering justice that you feel is right? Sure, but in the end, you are still serving the Nazis. And that's what the Celestial Dragons are. Oda has painted them as a fusion of the Nazis and the imperialistic Japanese from World War II. So just because you disagree with them, you are still serving them and keeping them in power. Because if they are attacked, the Nazis or the imperialistic Japanese, who are awful, so awful, read up on what they did. Not just the Nazis, we all know about them, but read more into what the imperialistic Japanese did. You're still protecting them and maintaining their power. And Oda actually shows us what the right thing to do would be, and that's what Dragon does. He leaves immediately after he finds out what's going on at God Valley. And then, of course, starts the Revolutionary Army. Now, I'm not saying you have to just go out and make the Revolutionary Army and just, try to overthrow your fascist regime that you were unknowingly a part of. But the minimum you can do is just leave it, right? GARP didn't. He is still a Vice Admiral to this day, meaning that for the last 40 years, he has helped maintain their power and continued all of the slavery, all of the other stuff that I can't mention on YouTube that they do every single day. So that is why I cannot get down with GARP, and I will not see him as being a redeemed character. Is he probably the creator of Sword and trying to overthrow them from the inside out? Yes. That still doesn't excuse it. So that's my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. Tomorrow, we're going to be going over the full summary, hopefully. And this chapter is just going to be incredible. I cannot wait to get more into it. But again, if you liked the video, guys, give it a like. Let me know in the comments what you thought. And I'll see you in the next one.